look into that win by the Copenhagen Wolves.
Thank you, Freak. A pretty decisive win there by Copenhagen Wolves. And I kind of want to jump right into Champion Select because we saw some interesting prioritization when it came to champion picks and bans comparatively to what we see in NA.
Yeah, you see a lot of teams value Ari quite highly. I think Ari is a really situational champ. I think she's actually really strong, but the problem with Ari is that she relies on your team to play the map really, really well. Like, you need to be able to establish vision control and deny proper vision at objective like choke points for you to play Ari. I feel like that's a champion that requires a really, really good team to play around it, irregardless of how good you are at the champion. And so there are 4 bands that went to mid, and they first picked Ari on their 1-2, and they didn't control the dragon vision at all that game. And so because of that, that's a team comp, and Ari is a team champion that should be going into like the mid game, getting picks and snowballing off those picks. But she wasn't able to do that, and they just got out snowballed by a really, really good. Or out late game by a good team comp.
And I feel like that speaks to the fact that H2k came into Champion Select with a very definitive game plan. They knew they were going for a pick comp. You know, they brought in the Morgana and the Elise with the Ahri, so they had a lot of CC. But Copenhagen Wolves actually did a fairly decent job of adapting, whether or not they predicted those picks or they were adapting mid-Champion Select. Xpecial, talk to me a little bit about that Champion Select process when you are in a best-of-5 series and you're like, I need to make adjustments to counter this team.
First off, H2k's team comp, it was really pick-centric. And what that means is that you want to get ahead early, you want to win your lane, and had that been a standard 2v2, 1v1 matchup, I think H2k would have won. It really seems like as if H2k has better laners just from history, and just their laning, their picks is just a lot of, they're supposed to get a lot of kills. And because Copenhagen Wolves played their game perfectly, 1v2, got 3 buffs, did everything that they should have done, and even got ahead with a weaker early game team comp, they naturally just won the game, and they had really good vision control, like Scarra said. And Copenhagen Wolves is looking like a completely different team, which is kind of surprising since most people would say that H2k had the advantage going into these games.
So let's talk a little bit about that 3-buff start that you just mentioned, because it definitely points to the fact that Copenhagen Wolves was prepared. They knew exactly what they wanted to do. They had clearly done some of their homework. So what's the proper response to that?
Well, the thing is, you should be automatically thinking that they can 1v2. Because as soon as they pick Mundo into Rise, that lane isn't that great. And Mundo's 1v2 is really, really good as opposed to Rise's 1v2, which is really poor. And they didn't seem to be able to understand that they were going to get 1v2 because they sent both their dual lane bot lane rather than keep the support open to make a play around the map. Not only that, neither team established deep ward control, and so they pretty much were just played like a guessing game. They kind of knew where people started, but they didn't know exactly where people were going to go. And so they had vision on the late invade on their red side, but conceding 3 buffs is like terrible, and they weren't able to get anything in response. Like, I think off the 3 buff concession, they could have maybe forced a 4-man drag right there, because they saw on the left side ward they were going back to blue side. The jungle and the top lane are going to blue side to farm, and so they could have maybe forced a dragon and dragon dance the damage, but it's like a really desperate move at that point. The correct counterplay was just that the support needed to be ready to be active and moving around the map, and maybe that they needed to establish better ward control at level 1.
I think a lot of teams, they like staying bottom as their dual lane when they feel like they're better players, when they feel like they have better matchups, better picks, and they want to be able to adapt correctly. But because of that, you need to be able to adapt correctly. They need to be able to stop them from getting 3 buffs or either get Dragon out of that, and they didn't do that. And that's not something that you can afford to do when you have early game matchups, and that's just what happened. They need to be able to not get outscaled and not give them advantages when they shouldn't be.
Which is exactly what I believe H2k's mindset is, that we do have stronger laners. So I would expect to see Ziggs either taken away or banned out, because what that champion essentially did was prevent Ahri from being able to capitalize on that first blood that she got even. We saw her walk into lane after her first buy with a needlessly large rod and then pick up a kill. Should have been an early DFG and some picks to follow.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I really think that Ziggs is like a really big anti-throw champion. Like, Ziggs and Tristana are 2 champions I consider, like, once you get the late game, it's extremely hard to throw a big lead, because they just do, like, they poke, they siege. They're like perfect champions in that they can disengage, and they have a lot of ability to control like zones and stuff like that. I think that I would have rather just let them have Orianna. And if you wanted to run Ahri, because Ahri is much easier to get picked picks on and much easier to gank than Ziggs is. And you can go into like a late game scenario where you can get good positioning on a mobile champion like Ori rather than like the same kind of positioning against a champion like Ziggs, which can establish better zones of control with his E and can just like hop away with his W.
All right, I want to jump into a couple of replays just so we can kind of decipher Copenhagen Wolves kind of their game plan and their decisiveness. So we're going to pull the first one up. It's about 22 minutes into the game. And what I love about this replay is that there are no kills that come from it, but that there's a lot of really clear decision-making on the side of Copenhagen Wolves. So especially if you don't mind taking away this replay.
Well, the big thing is they're right behind. HK is right behind at this point. They have pick comp. They need to be able to establish vision and have Copenhagen Wolves walk in and be able to use Charm, use Elise Stun, use Morgana, Bind. You have so many ways to catch people, but they're not using it. They're letting Copenhagen Wolves walk in, get control of the situation, and they're just going to walk down mid. They're going to go for the inhib mid, and here HK is going for the Dragon, which they have to at this point, or they can just go back. But either way, this is not a good situation for them, and they weren't able to get any picks. And Ziggs even steals the Dragon. Everything goes wrong for them completely. Unfortunately, Copenhagen doesn't get the inhib turret, but the damage is already dealt. They're already behind. They lose 2 objectives, and they don't get the control that they need for H2k to really pull ahead. They don't get any kills at all, and they don't establish the vision that they need to get those kills happening.
They also managed to bait the Rise TP out of that as well. So it was just kind of an altogether a clean sweep of globals at that point. Now I want to jump just 2 minutes further. Scarra, touch on the point about the strength of Ziggs and how it is an anti-throw champion. So we're going to pull replay up 24.5 minutes into the game. I'm going to let you kind of run away with this one and break it down for me.
Okay, well, they're getting really desperate right now. Like, they're looking for a pick. Like, they have to get something started to bring the game back in their favor. They run through a lot of Ziggs poke, and they run through such a tight area trying to chase down the Ziggs. Ziggs just ultis, hits 3 people with ulti. Immediately, they realize they lost. Because Ahri can't go in with that low health without dying instantly. Nami Wave hits 2, and they try to disengage against Trist, which has a lot of resets, and Trist and Kha'Zix would just eventually just clean up this. And actually, Copenhagen Wolves did a really safe play. I would have just I think a Baron would have been a really easy get off that because they got a free pick and everyone flashed and all ultis were down and they knew that they had no vision on it, or they knew that they can control vision on it. So it's really, really easy for them to get a Baron there. But instead they went for a really, really safe top turret and just backed and reestablished vision on Baron.
So at that point too, H2k had no health across the board. We saw Elise at 5%, Ahri at 5%, Lucian at 10%, thereabouts. In that situation though, right? Understanding that these teams, they're all professional players. They are prone to mistakes. H2k, what's the game plan from there? Xpecial, when you are behind, you are running a pick comp, you know you're up against this late game. What's your best chance at survival in a game like that?
So from just watching this game, their vision control is completely poor. It's not even a question of, were they behind or not? It's just they had a team comp where they're supposed to do it and they didn't do it. So what they should do now is force 2v2s. Go back into standards. Go back into team comps where you don't need to go for vision control. You just go for a skin like him. Tristana might be a huge priority, and I feel like mid pick is going to be really important. Not giving Copenhagen Wolves the Ziggs pick. I mean, Soren XD, people were saying is not as good as Forbidden, but he played really well. He was even behind a kill the first blood too, and he still completely farmed, did extremely well. And he did. I think he would be the MVP of that game just because of his overall zone control.
So I want to put you both on the spot real quick. Especially you kind of already touched on your thoughts for the next game, but in this series we're going to game 2 here. So Scar, I'll start with you. What do you expect to see? Maybe a couple specifics, maybe either picks bans or playstyle-wise adjustments they'll make, and do you have a prediction for who might walk away?
I understand that both teams want to really control mid lane in terms of mid lane bans. Like that was their strategy going in on draft. If they want to do that, they need to be really like. I agree with Xpecial. I think their vision control is not that great, H2K's. And so they should be looking for stuff that dominates lane and maybe skills well as well. And then so with that in mind, maybe they should look for something along the lines of like, I think Ziggs would be a good pick, but maybe Fevin wants to carry hard. Like I can understand Ahri. I know both players really, really want Orianna. So Orianna is going to be a very contested pick as usual. And then I guess in this situation, they just want to make sure that if they can't get a 2v2 lane setup, that they at least scale really well into the late game. Because I think they can take team fights even without great vision control, as long as they have like appropriate scaling.
So do you think if they make those changes that H2k will walk away with the game, or are you thinking that Copenhagen Wolves might have this locked up?
I I honestly want to see how they adapt to it because I think Copenhagen Wolves are already established that they understand 1v2s a lot better than H2k. So with that in mind, it's like, well, how did they adapt? Now I want to see how they play out the level 1. If they deport to level 1 and then react appropriately, then maybe I give them higher chances of winning. But as it looks like Copenhagen Wolves may just run away with this series.
Alrighty, then Xpecial, a quick prediction at all?
I think if H2k can adapt and win this game, I think they'll win it. And if they lose this game, I think it's going to be 3-0.
All right.
Wolves.
There it is. All right, we've got a couple predictions to keep track of. We do have to take a quick break, but when we come back, it's game 2 between Copenhagen Wolves and H2k Gaming. Don't miss it.
Maybe it's probably an outer, but Inhibitor's going to be under fire soon.
And here comes the ultimate.
Oh! Well, that just happened.
Febiven. Catch your flash.
I'm almost there, guys.
Febiven. Trashy. Febiven. Trashy. Sorry. Nice. Great, guys.
Want a Baron?
Nice. Okay.
Good job, guys.
Nice.
Good job, guys.